Two, and one. Hey, welcome back, Triple P Nation. As I mentioned, back on the show this week is our friend, Garrett Gunderson, and he's also a fan of the podcast. Garrett, say hello. Welcome back.
Hey, man. Last time was a blast. I'm glad to be back on.
Yeah, great to have you back on. I love the wall behind you and what you got going on over there. It looks great.
Yeah, man. That was Aaron's work, as you know, Aaron. So he put that up for me. I just pay for it. I don't do the work myself because it would look a lot more shoddy than this. But yeah.
Well, good for Aaron. He gets the idea, and you get to pay for it. What a great partnership.
Then we just built the podcast studio, and this is the ceiling, same wood. It looks really sweet. So it's like, yeah.
I'm sure that really helps with the audio and the sound. So very cool, very cool. So I saw some of the things that you were doing, and particularly with the CARES Act, and obviously we're in really unprecedented times. First of all, could you have ever imagined in your wildest dreams that we'd be living through anything like this? I mean, even in your wildest dreams. I mean, I know a lot of financial people kind of knew that things can get a little rough from time to time. But this bad?
So it's funny. There's what's McKinsey, the big consulting firm. They did this. I don't know, like a statement or a release years ago where they said, we're going to have a worldwide calamity in the next decade. And I read it and I was like, this is strange for a consulting firm to put this out. And I kind of discounted it. Like, I expected 2020 to be a rough economic year. I didn't expect a pandemic. Like when I first started hearing about COVID-19, I was like, whatever. Like I just whatever. It's nothing. No big deal. Like, this is just a little bit of hype. Then all of a sudden we're quarantined. Then all of a sudden people are heavily quarantined. And then you add that to the economic frailty that we have. And it's like, yeah, that's a little hard to imagine. A little hard to predict. I mean, you have to be pretty pessimistic almost to get to that point that you think that something like this would happen. But I mean, it's not unprecedented. I mean, I wasn't around, but after World War II, you had polio. So you had people marking homes if there was someone with polio inside of it, and very heavily quarantined. Obviously Spanish influenza, back in the a little bit after the turn of the century. So what's nice about this kind of a thing is we know how to handle things virtually. Like, we still have a massive amount of exchange and value creation in today's world that wasn't available during those other scenarios. So this isn't easy on a lot of people, but it's pretty cool to see some of the innovation and human ingenuity that comes out of it, of which the government has nothing to do with. I mean, the government didn't mandate it. They didn't help it. Their programs have been, terrible so far. But the good news is there's some new parameters, and they're learning with the new round of money that's coming out. So it's not just the big small businesses that get the funding, which 80% of them went to businesses that probably didn't even really need it when it came down to it. And the small businesses that were really struggling, they got denied, or they didn't even really get an in because their banks weren't going to make enough money on their little piddly amount of money. And, so I've been saying recession 2020 forever. Pandemic, I never spoke those words once, bro. No idea. Caught me by surprise. I poo-pooed it for months. So yeah, here we are.
So the recession was actually, an optimistic outlook as opposed to a pandemic economic collapse.
Totally, man. And I'm going to fly next week for the first time since March 1st. So yeah, I'm going to call Delta because I bought 2 first-class seats and see if they'll make sure to keep the one next to me open, because sometimes they won't. So I'm going to make that call, Monday or something, and see what the deal is, because I fly Tuesday. But yeah, it's do I wear a hazmat suit, or do I just go like a normal person, man? I know that there's some herd immunity that needs to happen here. So I don't know how the whole thing works, but I feel like we're going to get through it.
Dude, you're a young, healthy guy with a strong immune system. You'll be just fine. You'll be part of one of the 81% who doesn't even know, even if they get exposed to it.
Yeah, that's true. That's the interesting thing. But yeah, what crazy times, man. The good news is I've only had one bad COVID dream so far, and I've gotten more sleep than normal, and I've been able to help a lot of people during this chaos.
Well, that's it. I saw you stuff that you were doing, and it's really important because, like you said, the CARES Act was put in place to help small businesses, and particularly to financially maneuver their ways through this issue. At least to give them an opportunity to come out on the other side. And then all these big companies wound up, just taking massive amounts of money, and now they're being publicly shamed into returning the money, which I'm not a big fan of that, but perhaps this is a good thing because, like you said, they got that revenue and not necessarily needed it. But you mentioned something about sleeping at night, and I know for many people they're not sleeping at night. So let's really get into the specifics as far as from the average person who either has lost their job or can't go to work, or their businesses are closed. As you probably remember, we opened F45, opened with my kids. We were open 5 days and forced to shut down. We spent tens of thousands and ramping up marketing and getting ready to launch, which we did. We had a great launch, and then literally 5 days done. We've been shut ever since. And it's not just us. There's thousands of people in similar positions. Can you offer some optimism that would help people sleep a little bit better at night that maybe perhaps they didn't think about?
Well, I would say this, people are going to get more resourceful, and there's resources that they wouldn't have paid attention to. So one I really recommend for everybody that's a business owner is missingmoney.com. If you've ever been paid, but it didn't get to you because you changed addresses or it was a wrong address, it becomes, state property and you can get that money. Two is because of this, we see an unprecedented low interest rate environment. So whether it's the EIDLs, right, the economic injury disaster loans that you can get access to, or whether it's just refinancing everything from a car to a home, you can get really, really low interest rates. Today, I had people saying they were getting 3% to 3.35% fixed, right, up to 30 years. That is really a huge opportunity. And then there is a way to get access to some cash, whether that's the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, whether that's the Paycheck Protection Program, whether that's the Employee Retention Credit, or here's the bigger piece. We have tax opportunity now that has never existed, really. You got this net operating loss philosophy where, let's say 2017 or 2018, 2019, you had losses. You can go all the way back to 2015 and apply those losses against gains that used to have caps. And so there's a way to go get rebates. And there's a lot of people that own commercial property that are, having a hard time, but they can do something called cost segregation and run it back for years and get money back. Or there's R&D credits where people, if they built a website or they've modified some type of software in an organization or built an app, they can go get credits and they can run that against a full amount of income versus a partial amount of income and get rebates. So there is, even some of the pass-through rules are changing with some of these, IRS notices that have come out. So the reality is we have an opportunity to pay a lot less tax during this time, get some money back on that, and still apply for these other programs. But here's my main message. The government can't save you. Corporations won't, and effort isn't enough. So what it's going to take is personal responsibility and intelligent action. No longer, when it comes to our finances and money, can we be passersby handing our money over, hoping for the best in the next 30 years. It's time to become a cash flow investor. It's time to pay more attention to liquidity and have money set aside for times like these, because it's not just the difficulty of times like these, it's the opportunity on the other side of it, where there's distressed people and distressed businesses that you could buy at a discount, which saves jobs, which creates infrastructure and cash flow for you. And here's the last piece I'll say before I give you a chance to ask the next question is, we can't sit on our hands either, because inflation is going to be massive coming out of this. You can't put trillions of dollars into the economy with no value creation behind it without destroying or devaluing the existing money, which means the stock market's not going to be suffice moving forward. It's time that you either buy businesses that are private businesses that you can control. It's time for you to buy real estate if you're going to treat that like a business, or to build intellectual property so that you can go out there and really help and support people in a leadership type of way. And I think those are the three caveats moving forward that are going to help people get to the other side. But you've got to have cash and cash management. That should be the repetitive thing that we learned from COVID-19 and 2020. cash on hand and cash management with our outgo and inflow are things that we've neglected in the name of retirement. And retirement, we need to retire from the stressful things that destroy our life and instead get into the place where we're living a purposeful life, where we don't ever see ourselves stop working, but we're part of the solutions of a world that's riddled with problems.
Wow, man, there's a ton there. I love that last statement, though, is, retirement mindset as opposed to, being productive. You talk about sole purpose, right? You talk
Right.
about, continue to produce and be a part of the economic engine and utilizing the opportunities and changing the mindset of a retirement mindset to a continual growth aspect. Talk about, you mentioned about personal responsibility and education. What can people do today? And this is a lot what you do with your company, specifically how you empower people with the education and the knowledge that they then can use to begin to build wealth and understand how to create cash flow.
Look, man, gravity exists, right? Gravity exists, and whether we like it or not, it's there. And there's financial gravity from the moment we're born. And if we don't learn things about money, if we don't increase our financial intelligence, if we don't learn how to become good investors, if we don't create a way to build cash flow over time, then that financial gravity consumes us. And in today's world, there's going to be a massive transfer of wealth where we're going to see the wealthier get ridiculously wealthy and we're going to see the middle class get poorer unless you address financial gravity. So now is the time to increase your knowledge and take that personal responsibility. You don't have to know everything there is to know about money and finance. You just have to learn a few things of where you can invest based upon who you are, what you know, and how you can contribute. And so I just think that we've had a disservice done to us by Wall Street and by financial planning that says, hey, just trust us, just hand your money over here, it'll all work out in the long run. It's not working out in the long run. And it's not going to work out in the long run. And I get that that's the lullaby and that's the nighttime story that we want to hear. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's not all bad. It's not all bad because once you take responsibility, you get better results. Once you take responsibility, you don't get decimated when there's a time like this. Once you take responsibility, you actually take back control of your financial life and you have more prosperity. So I think that to expect that you're going to have financial freedom without responsibility, that is absolutely a myth. It doesn't exist. It doesn't happen. Maybe you could marry into that, maybe. But even then, I don't know how that's going to be sustainable. I think the reality is get good at something, figure out where you should invest and focus. Don't try to diversify. Don't try to know it all. It's not like you have to day trade on a daily basis, but you do have to know what's going on. And if you don't, you're losing money, you're taking risk, and you're going to find yourself in a very difficult spot if you haven't already.
I agree with you when you mentioned earlier that there's going to be tremendous opportunity. In any adversity, there's opportunity. And not that you prey on anyone's, misfortune, but, whether it's a chiropractor who, the office down the street, financially can't help it, you can step in, help that office, partner with that office,
right?
Get them rolling back up and do a 5-year buyback where they buy you back out. Win for them, win for you. And that can happen whether it's a hairdresser, it could happen if it's a small engine shop, same difference, same concept.
Look, people got to get beyond their own needs. Like, if you're worried about your needs, you're not learning the game of life. God, I just feel so harsh today, but we've got to fill up ourselves to the point where there's an overflow to others. And that's why I think retirement is just a selfish notion. And I think it's a foolish notion because it means that we're probably not doing something that we're capable, that we're enjoying, or that is really calling to who we are. We're just trading our life for a period of time to have money to eventually retire from something we didn't love. And look, it doesn't mean that you pick something and you love every step of the way. Every part of the process has difficulty. But I also find there's a lot of reward when there's challenge. I don't feel the same level of reward for something that just comes without effort, that's completely easy, and I don't feel like I earned it in any given way. So I really believe that responsibility is the biggest lesson here. And beyond that is ingenuity and innovation. And if we can get past the selfishness of retirement and realize there's bigger problems, and we need to come together as humanity. It's time to choose collaboration over competition, and it's time to choose innovation over cowering and just, needs. Like, yeah, that's basically what I would say there.
In the real estate market now, you're talking about, wherever your means are, there's going to be so much opportunity in distressed properties and where you can step in, like you mentioned, now with low interest rates, that if you're paying attention, you can start to get into and build some of the cash flow opportunities with real estate. And there's other ways, of course, as well too. But that's, like you had mentioned, find your niche. So I found it with real estate. I found it, building small businesses and either selling them or giving someone else an opportunity, then letting them buy it back. So finding that particular niche as you talked about, are there any tools or tricks that you would recommend that could, help someone maybe identify where that target lane is for them?
I've got this resource that's free at wealthfactory.com/solution that helps people identify kind of what some of their abilities are and some of the conditions they can create to be productive. I just barely got off an interview with this couple that's done 600 real estate transactions. And so, finding those people that have done this stuff before, if that's where you're going to go into, or the book Buy Then Build, if you're going to buy, businesses, I feel like you've got to treat any of these aspects like a business, and have mentors, have people that can support you, ask you questions you don't know how to ask yourself, help you avoid the missteps and mistakes so that you don't spend all your money with those things, and you can, make it more efficient by having the right people in your life. And really, there's a lot of people that support people in building intellectual property as well. I mean, it's just simply whether you have a lot of time on your hands and you get a digital course, some of that stuff can even be free, to you don't have a lot of time on your hands, so you hire someone to support you in what you're doing directly. It's somewhere in between there. But I think having that outside perspective is very, very useful, especially during times where there's more scarcity, more fear, and more frustration. That outside influence can be, important. And I look at, like, you doing real estate, you've got people that you do real estate deals with, and that you have, I don't know if it's a mastermind or a partner group or how it's structured, but I know you have that. And to me, if you try to go any of those things alone, it is a very steep learning curve. And I think in today's economy, there will be a lot of money made, but there will be a lot of money lost, because mistakes will count for a lot. Like, they're going to be tenfold now. Before, you can make a mistake in an up market and be like, oh, cool. I probably didn't buy that right, but I got out of it okay. You don't buy something right now, you might really lose a lot.
Sure. Now, you're 100% right. I mean, I'm a big fan of collaboration and surrounding yourself with really smart people. We've been able to take what we were doing at a kind of at a small level, and once I surrounded myself with really smart people who scaled it, and now we're doing, significant deals. I couldn't have done that on my own, but I had to take the ego out and be a little, as far as humble, say, hey, will you be willing to help me out and teach me? And then they brought me in, you know what I'm saying? And said, okay, you've got skills that we can use. But that can happen anywhere for anybody, if you're willing to, look at it from a collaborative standpoint and how we can serve each other.
Well, money and sports just aren't the same thing. Sports has winners and losers, and some people think that money is the same, but it's not, because it can exchange hands over and over again and therefore be expansive. And so you can have win-win scenarios. The only time you have win-lose scenarios in money is when it's overly competitive. One person takes, the other person gives. Options trading, one person bets it goes up, the other one person bets it goes down. But the reality is, collaboration is what allows us to accelerate our results and improve our performance, and actually end up wealthier, because we've got other people we're bringing along, and we can leverage different skill sets, different learnings. And I think that it's what's missing from today's marketplace more than anything is collaboration. Like, collaboration is key. Part of it's because people get a little bit miserly, where they're just trying to scrimp and sacrifice and save, so they don't want to split up the pie, or they don't want to pay for the lesson. They just, they want to go out there and do everything on their own. And it just kind of reminds me of fishing when I was a kid with my grandpa. We'd catch a boatload of fish out of the boat because we're trolling, and then I would use the trolling equipment when we get back to the campground to the river, and I'd never catch a fish because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. right? And I was like, but I want to show I knew what I was doing rather than asking a question. Somehow we think that vulnerability is weakness, or that, collaboration is weakness. But the reality is, if we aren't willing to ask the questions and we aren't willing to work with others, then it's going to be a very, very limited ceiling of what we can actually accomplish.
I couldn't agree more with that, man. As somebody who's coached people personally and professionally, it pains me to see people who reach out for help, but are willing to take the final commitment to actually do the deed. You know what I mean? Either out of pride or either out of ego. But, and it's sad to see, because they're in the exact same place 6 months, 12 months, 3 years from now, they're in the exact same place because they're not willing to step outside that comfort zone.
Yeah, I mean, if I probably in my 20s might have said you should get a coach because I was selling coaching, maybe, I don't know. But like, I've always spent at least 40 grand at a minimum per year from the time I was in my mid 20s on that, like coaching, mentoring. Like, that's what my flight is next week, is to go spend a full day with someone that has helped me with personal discovery more than anyone else. I mean, I'm stoked and excited for it. It's really deep work, but it's phenomenal. And I think as soon as we think we've got it figured out, that's the dangerous territory. Like, we can have confidence and we can have certainty as long as we're still considering risk management and we're still understanding that markets change and things change and it's a dynamic world. Because any time that I got to a point where I thought I had it figured out, the economy kicked my ass, right? And I look at some investors like Ray Dalio that, he's consistently looking for what could go wrong and what he might not be able to see, and continuing to bring a beginner's mind into what he does so that he doesn't become tone deaf to what's happening in the world. And he's managing, I don't know how many, hundreds of billions of dollars. So.
Well, you said confidence and certainty, and then the final part of that equation is humility. Because if you're overconfident and overcertain, you're going to miss a lot.
Totally.
So you mentioned before about liquidity, and we talked a little bit about that on the previous show that we were on. But I think it's really germane now to the issues that are being dealt with. You talk a lot about the 4 types of expenses. So can you break those down really simply so people can look for ways to create more revenue, more cash flow that they can use for opportunity?
Harvard Business Review did a study that went through companies that faced the 2008 Great Recession. And they found that the people that just cut back their expenses when they went into that were the ones that failed the most. The ones that just spent more money failed the second most. And the ones that had the most success had a balance between cutting and increasing. And so I think 4 types of expenses helps us navigate these times. The first type of expense is a destructive expense. Anytime we borrow to consume, that's destructive. I don't have the money, but I want to go on a trip, so I borrow the money. I come back from the trip and now I have a loan. That's a problem. Things that are coming out of my account every month, but I'm not doing anything with it or not benefiting from it. That could be destructive expense. An uncontrolled vice, right? Like an addiction that I spend money on. That's obviously destructive expense. Lifestyle expenses are the next kind. Lifestyle expenses are things that we utilize, that we enjoy, that we benefit from. It could be anything from food and shelter, and it could be anything from clothing and utilities. But the reality is we just pay cash for it. We pay cash and we don't borrow to consume. Then the third type of expense is a protective expense. That's insurance, asset protection, corporate structure, building liquidity. It's being able to be prepared for the financial surprises that hit our lives that we could never prepare for unless we have things set aside or protected. And then the fourth type of expense is a productive expense. Productive expense right now, we are spending 4 times more on marketing during this than we have at any other time in our company history. Big companies have advertised less. Small companies don't have the money to advertise. Therefore, it's become more affordable, and we're reaching a better target per dollar. So that's a productive expense. We upped it. We didn't budget it. We basically said, let's eliminate any destructive expense. What are we spending money on that we're not benefiting from? And then let's just manage our lifestyle expenses. And I'm managing those a little bit more than normal, because January and February, we were just spending money on stuff that was frivolous and not needed, anything from armoires to you name it, And I'm like, okay, let's just cut back. It's not like we have to because we've been prepared for this, but it's an intelligent thing because we don't know how long a quarantine is going to last. And we want to have capital on the other end of this to be able to support and help people that are struggling that will be beneficial for us for sure. So, you know, we've been really managing those lifestyle expenses really well. On the protective expenses, I mean, I had a captive insurance agency that's been funded, so I have a lot of money that we're actually making our first claim because every event I'm supposed to speak at is either canceled or changed. You know, and then I've got, you know, cash value in my insurance plans. I've got cash sitting at the bank. So, you know, just be able to weather the storm. And then the productive expenses are, where can we be putting $1 in and get more than $1 out? And for some of the things we're doing right now, that's a little bit more convoluted than normal, because some things we're putting $1 in, we're building a lot of goodwill, and it's going to be a while before the dollars come out the other side. I just finished 4 straight weeks where we did 2 hours a week of a virtual wealth acceleration workshop. We didn't charge for it. We gave it to anyone that's ever paid us something in the past as a bonus. Here's a lifeline. We want to help you out. You know, it's goodwill. And it cost us money to put it on. It took time. But ultimately, we just felt like we're here for people. We're in this together. I'm doing every Thursday. Last week, it was 1 hour and 40 minutes. This week, we're able to narrow it down to 45 minutes, but helping people navigate the CARES Act and the, you know, everything like the PPP and the EIDLs and bringing on tax attorneys. And we did that at like half of what we would normally charge for something like that to simply help people out. Still a productive expense, maybe not as productive as it would have been without COVID-19. But the reality is you can build goodwill and relationship capital in times like this. So the key to this is eliminate destructive expenses, manage lifestyle expenses, address protective expenses, and increase to a manageable amount productive expenses. Like, we didn't spend 10 times the amount on marketing because it's maybe more than we could handle, or we're reaching people that we don't want to reach. So there is that kind of, where's the tipping point and where does it not make sense to put more money into it? Because the productive expense, if it's overfunded, can become destructive. It can become something that, you know, drains your cash flow or isn't intelligent. Or in 2010, we took on more clients than we could handle, and that hurt your reputation. So we had to repair that reputation because of being stupid and greedy by taking way too many people into the program than what we could handle. So there's the 4 types of expenses.
Yeah, no, that's great. Really well said. And people should get some really actionable steps that they can start with immediately. You know, from you and other people that I've learned from, particularly with the cash value and the whole life policies, I've been able to build up a fairly substantial cash value to be able to use in times like this to go out and purchase stuff and be my own bank. And, you know, when I first heard that concept, like, sounds kind of cool, but it's like, it sounds too good to be true.
Right.
And then we started, and now, you know, we used it to finance our new business. And, you know, we've got plans for other things as well too. So my point is to everyone else out there listening, this stuff really works. This is not just some pie in the sky concept that, you know, you have to be ultra rich to make this happen. Heck no, you could be a fairly average person and create some, you know, real great opportunities with things like cash value in a whole life policy.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice that the market, it could be doing whatever it's doing, and you know you have a minimum guarantee in that cash value. And that if market's going down, some people are afraid to cash out to go buy a business or a piece of real estate, but we know ours is stable and that we're going to have it available to us whenever that time comes. So I like it because I could be really like, I don't have to think about it while it's in there. May not be hitting a huge rate of return or a really high watermark, but it's not going down and it's not taxed. So when the right opportunities come, I know I've got the capital there, and I'm ready to potentially use that. But I still think it's early. I still think there's going to be way better deals 6, 12, 18, 24 months down the road.
Totally great. Yeah, unfortunately, the impact is going to be felt down the road, not as much now. You're talking about the program you did for previous clients and the stuff that you're doing now with the CARES Act. And I've been saying to my clients, chiropractors and other small business people I work with, there's 2 things that we have to focus on right now. And it's exactly what you did. You have to adapt and innovate how you deliver your service and how you communicate with your people. If you continue to do business the same way you've done before, you're going to just be white noise. What's going to cause you to stand up and be different and get noticed, so that not only are you a part of the solution, but when things do eventually open up, because they will, right? Who are they going to think of first? The guy or gal who were there with them side by side every step of the way and consistently offered their hope, support, and encouragement and education, or the person that just ghosted them And all of a sudden now, the world opens back up, and they're trying to get them back into their business and spending money, and the consumer's going to go. I mean, it's an obvious choice. I'm going to go with this individual. So I love that you're doing that. We did a webinar for chiropractors called the Coronavirus Survival Guide for Chiropractors. It's exactly what we did. We gave them tools, tactics, and strategies to adapt the business and to rebuild and retention, re-engagement, and revenue back in the business. And I just think that what you're doing is perfect, because it's needed so much now, particularly because there's so much financial uncertainty. You mentioned something that I don't think a lot of people understand, and I know you're well spoken enough to break this down in simple terms that even I can understand. You mentioned that inflation is going to be it's going to be horrible, because you can't continue to print money the way we have and not have it cause the cost of every good to just skyrocket. Can you explain the inner workings of how that is and what that may look like down the road?
Okay, so I'll break it down into the formula first, which is the real measure of the economy is velocity. And what we do is we take the GDP, which is the gross domestic product, which is our output, and we divide it by the money supply, which is M2. So GDP divided by M2 equals velocity. So velocity goes up when money circulates more frequently. The more it exchanges hands because of value and because of that exchange, well, that increases velocity. When we have quarantine and COVID-19, that velocity starts to collapse. It starts to decrease. People are exchanging less. People are going out. People are holding on to their money instead of going out to eat and that kind of stuff. So velocity starts to decrease. So the government says, well, we should flood the economy with some money because people aren't out there creating value, right? They're staying at home. And so now all of a sudden, if we add more to M2, so just think about like when we learn long division, right? We got, when we add a higher number to the denominator, that doesn't equal a higher number on the other side. It's actually a new input. So it's just output divided by input. And when we add that cash and nobody's done anything for that, it just devalues the existing cash that's out there. Because why wouldn't it? Like, imagine this. Here's where it's beneficial. Imagine you've got student loans and mortgages, and you've been you're just like, I don't want to pay that off. I'm just going to pay the minimum. You're glad there's inflation, because it means that your mortgage is going to be easier to pay in the future, because it will be feeling like it's less and less expensive. Whereas the person that did everything they could to pay it off just before this, well, they used more valuable dollars. If you went back to 1980 and looked at what the costs of things were, whether it was, a meal or college or a house or a car, and then look at it today, we've seen an astronomical increase, especially in universities and long-term care facilities. So that's inflation, right? And that inflation happens especially when we're printing more money, because the thing that predicates it is value. And if there isn't value behind that coming out there, it just makes what already exists worth less, because you're like, yeah, there's this dollar that I have, there's now a whole bunch of new ones. So it'd be kind of like, let's say you go buy a home, and yours is the only home in a place that has demand for a bunch of homes. But now they build 10 times more homes than people could live in. Those homes go down in value. That's the same thing we're doing to the dollars with just flooding the economy with this cash. We have to create value. We have to exchange with one another. We have to serve. We have to solve problems. If we're just adding numbers into a computer screen without any of that, it makes those numbers less valuable.
So
They're
Garrett,
less valuable.
Can they pull currency out? Like, once it's been created and moved into the economy, can they pull it back out to mitigate maybe some of the inflation? I'm just asking this question. I don't know if that's possible.
The way what they would do at that point is change reserve requirements at banks, so that they have to hold more money, so it lowers the amount that's lent, right? That would be one thing that they could do in order to kind of change that inflationary situation. They can change interest rates and increase interest rates in order to battle it. But once it's out there, that's now in someone's hands.
Sure.
That's now someone that goes, that's mine. If they want to take that back, who are they taking it from? Now, they did this in Cyprus, right? They did that in that country. They said, if you have more than this money, we're taking it back. So could they? Sure. If they do, they're stealing it from people that now think it's theirs. So it's a pretty tough situation.
Yeah, I mean, you could see why the equities market like gold and silver is really starting to climb because first of all, it's finite, and number two, it's a medium of exchange that's not controlled and manipulated by governments. I.e. also too, what your thoughts are as far as like bitcoins and cryptocurrency, but also another finite medium of exchange that many are saying is poised now because of the influx of funny money into the system, could cause it to just take off.
It could. I mean, if we got into nitty gritty here, let me give you the big points. Number one, the Federal Reserve is neither federal nor a reserve. They're central banks owned by major families like the Rothschild family that then issue notes to a government that is a debt instrument, meaning the government now has to pay to have that. Right now the Fed rate's at 0, so they're not having to do that as of right now. But that's insane. It means that we now have debt instruments is what we're calling our cash. They fractionalize that from a banking standpoint. So $1 doesn't just equal $1 in the economy. It might be used 6 or 7 times because once you get a loan, you put that money back into the bank, they loan that money out again. That's where the reserve requirement might limit the number of times. So, it's then fractionalized banking, central banking, Federal Reserve, and now we're just adding more to the market, and then we're manipulating interest rates. I mean, it's kind of an interesting game, and it's all a fiat currency, meaning there is no gold backing the currency anymore. So that's why it's so easy just to flood the market with more. And we have a government that, I don't know what last I checked, they were 23 trillion in debt. It's going to go up even worse now. So think about that. Like if a business was 23 trillion in debt, we'd say it has no hope. But as a government, somehow we still keep giving them opportunities and control and trusting them. Like, not to get too political here, but I don't really care what your political party is. I always find it interesting anytime a politician says they're going to create a government program. I'm like, is this the same government that's $23 trillion in debt? Is this the same government? Like what makes us feel like that their good intentions are ever going to amount to anything that's valuable at this point? I feel like they've lied to us for far too long. We saw what happened with the CARES Act. It's time to not wait for them to help us or save us. There's no one coming in on a white horse to save you. It's just your time to take responsibility for your own life. And don't let fear override rationality and give up any more of your rights. We saw that with 9/11. We gave up rights with the Patriot Act of human beings now can be completely spied upon. I think we're going to have some of those same things because people are scared of COVID. And so stop thinking about the global economy and start focusing on your personal economy. What steps can you take today? What things can you do right now? How can you help your neighbors, any human being that you can reach, your subscribers? Like, focus there instead of focusing on all the things you can't control, because the Federal Reserve, they're here to stay. And, people are like, why don't you talk more about them? I'm like, because it becomes disheartening and it doesn't help people to take responsibility.
Totally agree with that. We've been speaking the same message. That's exactly what I've been saying. Focus on what you can control each and every day. That's how you get up each day, the mindset that you create, the emotions that you create, and the actions that you take. If you do that each and every day, you're going to keep moving forward. You're going to feel good about yourself, feel good about your future. Because if you're worried about things like that are way scaled, way beyond anything that we could ever control, you just might as well crawl in a corner and just crumble away, because there's nothing you can do. I just think it's great that that's a really, really important message. So you mentioned the CARES Act. Let's talk about the program that you're doing, helping with small businesses. Give us some insight to what you're doing and how you're helping businesses.
This is pretty cool. $97 investment, $97, 30-day guarantee. They get 2 things. One, how to navigate the Payment Protection Program, right? The PPP. And number 2, which will last far beyond that, is how to manage net operating losses and how you can go back up to 3 years all the way on losses, but then go and apply them clear back to 2015. This is going to be a massive opportunity for a lot of people to save tax. So those 2 things come at $97. If people invest another $397, then we have everything on the economic injury disaster loan, and we have everything on the employee retention credits, and everything on the individuals and families with rebates and qualified plans, and the new charitable deduction. situations. We show how to fill out applications. We every week bring on lenders and tax attorneys to help them navigate it. They can ask questions live that I host. So $97 is really low investment to really help people navigate all this. We have a lot more money that just came in or will be coming in that's really now intended for the small business. So now is the time to kind of jump on this. But it's critical cash in critical times. We're not stopping at the CARES Act. We're not stopping at these other things. We're saying, what are all the lifelines? And I feel like tax is probably the biggest one that becomes a massive advantage for people. So if you want to navigate this, that's what we built.
I love it, because you're really partnering with people, helping them, holding their hand, giving them guidance, providing experience and knowledge and expertise, so they can get through this confidently, knowing that they're going to be safe and they're being, that they're being looked after, and they can do it effectively. What was the name of the program again?
Critical cash in critical time. So how do they get access to cash? How do they do better cash management? How do they navigate the 3 IRS notices and the 3 government acts? And by the way, if there's a 4th government act, we will update videos. We'll add more content. We'll make it, like I went and refilmed from the original program, which is still brand new because of the updates. We had to collaborate with a tax attorney, a high-end wealth manager, another accountant. We've just been bringing in our elite resources that are usually reserved for the very top end clients that we have, and bringing them in to help everybody out with this, because it just takes a lot to decipher this. And it's been kind of around the clock kind of work, working weekends, working nights. I've been going to bed so early this week, just recovering from building this program. And it's not going to be the biggest money maker for us, but at the same time, it's goodwill, it's supporting people, it's investing in them. So on the other side, they know who we are, that we did everything we could to help, and that we're still the firm that was great during good times, but we are the essential during tough times like this firm. Like, this is what we were built for.
Dude, amen. That's exactly what we're doing as well too with the Caros, man. We're giving a 4-month program to help them, guide them through this process, but not only that, to help position their business so when life turns back normal, they're set and ready to pounce and to lead the growth back in their community. So that's awesome. Triple P Nation, I'll have a special link for you guys where you can purchase and get access to the Critical Cash, Critical Times program that Garrett was talking about. And I would highly recommend it. A lot of the things that I've learned from Garrett that I've applied with my businesses through the PPP and his team. So it's been really helpful. And again, it's good to know that you can reach out and you can ask those questions and you have an expert on your side to make it happen. Garrett, you mentioned before that, they ran out of cash. And I think in 11 days, $350 billion, poof, gone. And I was talking to some small business owners who I really encouraged them. I said, get out there, get your loan completed, get your paperwork together. I think the 10th is when you could submit. And a few people dragged their feet. And what happened? Well, first of all, many of the personal banks weren't participating. And so if they had to go to another bank, they were servicing their own customers first. So they went to the back of the line. So they were left holding the bag. So now they ran out of money. Now they're starting to worry. They see their cash flow declining and they're wondering, how am I going to keep paying my employees or pay my overhead? And so I would encourage, you probably agree with me, if you haven't done it, all right, you do need to, get your paperwork done, take advantage of the program, get the applications, get the help you need, and do it ASAP. Because what do they print now? Another $450 billion, whatever it might be. That'll be gone in no time too.
Totally. And look, banks have been atrocious with this, but let's be in the bank's shoes for just a minute.
Sure.
You could do one loan for $10 million, so you could do 400 applications and get paid the same. Come on, government. This is the best that you could think this through. Did you see how big the stack of papers were for the CARES Act? Yeah, I couldn't be more disappointed in our politicians. Shame on you.
Wait, you had high expectations?
No, I've never had expectations for them, man. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say if anybody I would have zero expectations, it would be our politicians. So this has been really helpful, really informative. Give me a big takeaway from this. First of all, wait, before you answer that, because one of the questions I was thinking about earlier was, talk about the mindset people need to create now, especially many people who are in fear and uncertainty and, you know, all that other stuff. Talk about the mindset they have to create to begin to pull themselves out of this so they can begin to rebuild and look forward to the future. Talk about that first.
Succumbing to fear is selfish. I know that that's not a popular opinion, but it's to be a victim is to be selfish. And if you're in paranoia that nothing's going to work out and everything's against you, let me be clear. Most of you are just suffering a future you can't understand or comprehend because none of us can. It's not predictable. So the best thing that you could do is, instead of woe is me and feeling bad, is you've got to call people that you know and trust, that you can contribute to, that you can have them kick you in the ass if you need it and ask you questions that you're not asking of yourself. Because you playing small, feeling weak, not owning your strength, not adding value, not being resourceful exacerbates the problem, doesn't help it. Look, it's okay to vent. It's okay to have a bad day. But to make this the story of your life, it's not going to serve you well. It's going to prevent you from serving others. So you've got to be willing to be open, vulnerable, authentic, and be in communication. If you find yourself depressed, sad, and scared, call someone that you know and trust, that you consider a peer or above you, and then you just tell them what's going on so they can help pull you out of it. Don't call the person in your family that's going to make matters worse, or that's reading stupid headlines that talk about apocalyptic states, or the governor of California said we'd be at 22.5 million Californians with COVID-19 right now. This is irresponsible from a journalistic and a political standpoint. Opt out of that. It's not helping you. Instead, opt into your life. Everyone has an excuse of why they don't have to be productive. It's those that use that as fuel to teach others how to avoid the obstacle or overcome the obstacle that get to the other side. It's those that cower and hide from it that become all consumed by it. If you're afraid, create a bigger vision. Only if your vision is smaller than this fear do you lose. I'm not saying it's not real that people are dying, but at the same time, the influenza has been killing people for a long time. There's probably more people right now committing suicide than are actually dying from COVID, because I've heard for every certain percentage of unemployment increase, there's an astronomical amount of people that are killing themselves. We've got to band together. We've got to be human beings that support one another. And I'm coming from passion and compassion. I know I'm very direct and poignant, because if we don't hear the story in a hard and direct way, then we continue to be swayed by the bullshit that's being peddled into people's lives today. So it's time to continue to live life. And ever, like when my partners died in a plane crash in 2006, I was supposed to be on that plane. The fact that I wasn't, I got a different lot in life. I could either make that my excuse for the rest of my life, or I could use that as a second chance, and I should fear nothing, because all of this is gravy from here forward. Hey, the fact that we're even alive is a miracle. So like, let's just actually act that out with a vision that's worthy of being alive.
And well said, really. I mean, and the fact too, you know, each day, if you could start with a little bit of gratitude, just be grateful that you have another opportunity to spend some moments with your family or to pursue your dreams. Man, it doesn't have to be anything big, but I love the concept that fear is being selfish. And yes, it's the lowest tone emotion amongst the scale, you know, that we experience. But, you know, when it comes to fear is just, you know, the fear of loss or the fear of rejection. You could turn that around by being proactive and taking action, again, controlling the things that you can control. So really appreciate that. It's really, really well said. So man, this is, as always, goes fast. And I really, really enjoy our conversations, because it's always stimulating and I learn a lot, and it just makes me better. And of course, I know everybody here listening on the Power, Passion, Prosperity podcast is really grateful for your words of wisdom today.
Thanks, Jay, for having me, man. I appreciate it. I'll be flying through Atlanta, the place where we met, next week.
Right. Yeah. Well, you and probably 3 other people.
Yeah. Hey, man, I might just have the airport to myself and, you know, some peace and quiet.
That's good. Well, safe travels. And again, I appreciate it. And we'll be in touch. And Triple P Nation, I'll be back shortly to close out the show and to give you the link where you can access the program Garrett was talking about, Critical Cash, Critical Times. Garrett, thanks again.